Have you ever wondered how people get those hard surface mechanical looks on their object? It's just something about it, whether it's in a video game, whether it's on someone's portfolio, on ArtStation, maybe it's from an engineering piece, whatever it may be. There's always that thing that just makes it feel more mechanical, more structurally sound, if that makes sense. And there are a few techniques you can use to get the same exact result. I'm going to show you everything I know. The first and most important thing you can do to get that look in Blender is number one, go up here, change to Matcap, and make sure your cavity is turned on. The cavity is going to give you those nice edge highlights, which is going to enhance the form while you're modeling and make it look a little bit more appealing to the eye. This is the number one most important thing you can do, and also, ironically, one of the most common questions I get on my channel. Change to Matcap, turn on cavity. You can copy my settings if you want here. The next thing is the importance of chamfers and fillets. Now, whenever I say bevels, I usually refer to one or the other. Basically, a chamfer is a one segment bevel and a fillet has multiple segments. That's just the easy way to explain it. So one of the easiest things you can do on pretty much any model is you can introduce a chamfer. So I'm going to tab into edge mode, and I'm just going to go in here and I'm just going to make this design a little bit more, I don't know, appealing, I guess. I'll just scale that a bit, move that down a bit, and I'm going to introduce two chamfers here in the back. Control B, and we're going to do something just like that. And what you can also introduce are fillets, which is basically multiple segments, not just one segment. We're going to do that here on the front. We're going to press Control B. We're going to scroll up and just make it nice and round. And just like that, we have some fillets and some chamfers. And I might even add a fillet right here on the top as well, just to make that look a little bit more smooth and interesting. Now, the issue with chamfers is that they look blocky. They don't look realistic, especially when you're combining chamfers with multiple fillets, kind of like we have here. First thing, let me right click to shade auto smooth. And the next thing you can do to really make the chamfers look like an actual object in real life is to add fillets on top of your chamfers. Basically, add bevels on these two edges here. So I'm going to tab into edge mode, and all we need to do is take these, press Control B, and you don't have to introduce, a large, bevel here, just a smaller one. And just by doing that, you're going to have a much more kind of mechanical hard surface feel to your object. This is why using chamfers and fillets are so powerful, because it really enhances the look and kind of makes it look a little bit more structurally sound, if that makes sense. The next and one of the most important fundamentals that a lot of people don't understand is the difference between concave fillets and convex chamfers. I almost messed that one up, but I'll explain it here in a second. If you have some sort of concave area like this on your object, you need to make sure the inside edges are beveled with multiple segments. You should not be using chamfers here. Now, there are exceptions to this rule, and I'll demonstrate. But in general, for concave areas like this, now as a reminder, concave you can think of as something kind of carved in, kind of like a cave, and convex would be kind of, the outer edges per se. So on concave areas, you always want to introduce multiple segments on your bevel. It's going to look a lot more realistic and a lot more natural. You can kind of see, if I used a chamfer here, looks too blocky, looks too fake, something about it is off. But if I use multiple segments, this looks much better and much more realistic. Now, in terms of the convex areas of your model, you have a few different choices. You can use chamfers, and you can also utilize fillets there as well. It's kind of up to you and the type of look you want to introduce to your model. So let me show you here. On this outer portion, I could use technically either. I could use multiple segments on my bevel here and kind of get this nice effect. However, my bevel is kind of smushed here, so I need to make sure I apply my scale. But if I introduce, a nice round bevel here, this is perfectly acceptable and something that is totally fine to use. Likewise, I have a bit more creative freedom for the convex areas. I can also use chamfers here as well. So if I scroll down and add a chamfer, that is also technically okay. Now, when you're utilizing all these different techniques, you need to be very careful because sizing is incredibly important. A lot of people don't understand the importance of sizing. It's something you have to kind of feel. You get the feel for it over time. For example, here I just wouldn't want to add like a massive chamfer. It just doesn't look right. Likewise, I don't want to add a small one either, just because, I don't know, something about this. I mean, this could work, but in general, there's kind of going to be more of a middle ground, if that makes sense. I kind of want to go right around here, more or less, and this is going to give me kind of the, best of both worlds. Of course, there are always exceptions, but this is a very good guideline to follow. And at this point, if you have a chamfer on a convex edge or set of edges, you can also, like we did earlier, you can stack that with a bevel on top of those. Now, for smaller chamfers like these, generally a bevel modifier is going to pick that up just fine. But if you want to have a little bit more control, especially if you're using a CAD software, you could do this manually for sure. You could introduce some nice bevels there, and maybe you have this top area kind of beveled and this bottom area nice and flat, and you could kind of switch the order. And you're just going to see this really allows you to get different kind of combinations. Now, sometimes this type of thing can introduce problems, and let me demonstrate one of those examples. If you haven't seen my video on beveling incorrectly, I discussed the topic of continuous edges and why this is so important for getting a clean bevel. For example, right here, notice if I apply this boolean, let me go ahead and do that. Notice if I apply this boolean, we kind of have this kind of discontinuous edge. It kind of just harshly transitions right here instead of smoothly. Now, if I try to bevel this whole area, it's going to kind of work, but we're going to get this more sharp type of effect right here, which isn't necessarily what we want. So you definitely need to be careful and kind of pick your battles here, because you are going to have to compromise if you end up wanting to, add a bevel into an area like this. Now, we can definitely get away with it here, but for example, if I just had a straight up, chamfer, and then I tried to do that, it's just not going to look anywhere near as good if I try to add, a bevel just like that. You see what I mean? Obviously, I could get away with a chamfer here, and I could kind of get fancy and then bevel this area and then maybe bevel this area. But just keep that in mind if you choose to do things like this. It is definitely going to affect how your overall model looks. Now, make sure in situations like this, you also adjust your auto smooth to make sure it picks everything up. Now, let me show you an example where you could actually utilize concave chamfers. There are ways to get away with this. Like I said before, it's more of a feeling. You'll kind of develop this feeling as to whether something fits or not. So what I'm going to do here is add in a cylinder. We'll give it 64 vertices. I'm going to go ahead and shade auto smooth, and I'm going to add a hole right here in the top of this object, run a difference boolean, and just like that. Now, in this situation, I could use either a chamfer or I could use multiple segments on my bevel as well, a fillet. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start with a chamfer. I'm just going to go in here. I'm going to bevel that, give it a nice chamfer. And as you can see, it looks pretty weird because this is a concave chamfer. But check this out. I can stack this with some bevels here. Something like that. And you're going to see this looks a heck of a lot better compared to just having a boring chamfer on the inside there. This is why stacking these two together are so important for the visuals of your model. And likewise, if you didn't want to use a chamfer here, you're more than welcome to just use a regular bevel, and you're going to get pretty clean results that way as well. And that, my friends, is literally all you need to know to get that nice mechanical hard surface feel to your objects. Use cavity, make sure you're careful with your bevels, so choose the chamfer wisely and choose the fillets wisely, and also make sure you remember my #1 rule: do not use chamfers on concave areas of your mesh unless it makes sense. And trust me, you'll know whether it makes sense or not just by looking at it. I hope this video was valuable to you. If it was, definitely check out some of our free guides over on blenderbros.com/free-guides. We have a ton of resources over there for you to consume and take a look at. Thanks a bunch for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.